bombshell tonight in the Nolan Wells investigation. Tonight, a Nolan Wells phone evidence torpedo. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
All but, I believe, one took a polygraph, and from what was told to me, that they all passed.
Nancy, my clients have not taken a polygraph test.
Nobody's guilty, and everybody's a suspect. We don't know the truth yet, but we will.
Christine Wells buried her son. 6 weeks. 6 weeks of waiting for answers. 6 weeks of watching people she trusted tell lie after lie after lie about what happened to Nolan on July 4th. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that they all lawyered up before Nolan's body was even found. That's not innocent. Innocent people don't immediately hire criminal defense attorneys. Innocent people don't coordinate stories and hide evidence. Innocent people don't make your family beg for a phone that belongs to your son while they're holding onto it like it's a weapon. This is what happens when 8 people decide protecting themselves matters more than justice for Nolan Wells. This is what guilt looks like. Subscribe, because this is the moment everything changes. Let me start with what Christine Wells knows. Her son went on a boat with 8 friends on July 4th. 5 hours, just 5 hours on Horn Island, and then they left. Except Nolan didn't come back with them. Nolan disappeared, and his best friends, the people he trusted, they have no explanation, or they have 8 different explanations. That's the problem. 8 people tell 8 different stories. Katie says Nolan wanted to stay with her. Warren says Nolan left the boat at 4:30, the official time, 4:30 p.m. Nolan's body wasn't reported missing until later that night. But here's what Nancy Grace found. 2 witnesses, separate witnesses, credible witnesses, people who know Nolan. People who made positive identifications. They saw Nolan on Horn Island at 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. on July 4th. 5 p.m., 6 p.m., that's after the boat supposedly left. The Triton left at 4:30. Established by GPS. Documented. Yet these 2 witnesses are placing Nolan on the island 1 to 2 hours after his friends claimed they left. So either Nolan's friends are lying about when they left, or Nolan's friends are lying about Nolan being on the boat when they left, or these witnesses are lying. But they're not lying. They went to police immediately, they told the truth, they offered to help the investigation, and nobody's asking them hard questions. Nobody's pressing the friends about this contradiction, because the official narrative is already written. Nolan drowned. Accidental drowning. Hisislening Ben. Move on. But it's not closed. It's not even opened. There's been no criminal investigation, no autopsy completed, no evidence examined, nothing. Meanwhile, Christine Wells is fighting alone, fighting to get her son's phone examined, fighting to understand how her son died, fighting against 8 people who decided that protecting themselves is more important than telling the truth about what happened to Nolan. Let me break down the timeline, because this is critical. This is where the lies become undeniable. The Triton departed Horn Island around 4:30 p.m. That's documented by GPS. That's their story. That's what they're sticking to. 4:30 Nolan supposedly was supposed to get back before they left. He supposedly said he had to get back to the boat, but then he didn't get back. So what happened between 3:30 when Katie says Nolan told her he was leaving, and 4:30 when the boat supposedly left? 60 minutes. 60 minutes is plenty of time for everything to go wrong. 60 minutes is plenty of time to panic, to hide evidence, to coordinate a lie. And then the Coast Guard call at 4 p.m., right in the middle of that window, right when things were supposedly falling apart. They called saying the boat was sinking, but the boat wasn't sinking. The GPS shows the boat moving deliberately, not frantically, not in distress, deliberately, calculated movement, and then acceleration. So either they were calling about a sinking boat that wasn't sinking, or they were calling about something else, something they're lying about, something they needed to establish an alibi for. The Coast Guard operator asked if anybody was alive. That question, that single question, proves something went wrong, something that made a trained professional suspect someone was dead. Now let me tell you what they're hiding, because it's obvious. It's so obvious it's painful. Nolan's phone. That phone contains the entire truth. Every message, every Snapchat, every TikTok, every location tag, every photo, every conversation. It's all there. Which is why they deleted it. Which is why the phone went from full to completely empty. No pictures from July 4th. You think about that. An 18-year-old at a beach party, and there are 0 photos. Not one. Nolan supposedly took pictures of everything. But on July 4th, the day he died, nothing. Completely wiped clean. And here's what's critical. Someone deleted those photos intentionally. Someone took time to go through that phone and remove evidence. Someone sat down and said, I need to make sure nothing incriminates us. Scott Aker, digital forensics expert. 22 years with the FBI Cellular Analysis Survey Team. He explains how Cellebrite works. This is state-of-the-art technology, military-grade forensics. When you delete a message on a phone, the message doesn't actually disappear. It goes into deleted storage. The phone still knows it was there. The phone stores the metadata, the timestamp, the content, everything. Cellebrite can recover all of that. Cellebrite can show every single deleted message, every deleted photo, every deleted Snapchat, and it can show exactly when those deletions happened, by whom, in what order. So if Nolan's friends deleted messages at 4 p.m., if they removed photos at 4:15, if they wiped his Snapchat at 4:30, Cellebrite will show all of it, every keystroke, every action, every cover-up. That phone is a roadmap to what happened. That phone is evidence of guilt. That phone proves conspiracy and coordination. And Nolan's family knows it. That's why they wanted an independent expert present. And that's why they asked for chain of custody protection. That's why they asked simple questions. Who has access to the data? How is it going to be handled? When will it be returned? Those aren't obstructionist questions. Those are the questions innocent people ask when they're protecting their son's evidence. But the DA's office, the same office that hasn't conducted a criminal investigation, the same office that ruled this a drowning without forensic evidence, they sent a demand letter. 24 hours. Turn over the phone while Christine was out of state, while she was at the National Association of Black Journalists conference, speaking about her son, speaking about injustice, speaking about the need for answers. She gets a letter saying you have 24 hours, and she's 600 miles away. And she can't comply, and suddenly she's obstructing justice. And suddenly the family is the problem. But think about the timing. Think about who benefits from this impossible demand. The 8 people on that boat, that's who. Because if Christine can't comply, if the phone doesn't get examined immediately, then more time passes, more evidence could be lost, more time for the deletion to become permanent. That's not accident. That's strategy. That's coordination between law enforcement and the 8 people who were on that boat. Nolan's family is not the enemy. They're the victims. They're the ones fighting for truth, while 8 people who were supposed to be Nolan's best friends are protecting themselves with attorneys and silence and lies. These 8 people were on that boat with Nolan. They're the last ones to see him alive. They know exactly what happened. And they're choosing to stay silent rather than tell the truth. That's not innocent. That's guilty. That's consciousness of guilt. That's people who know they did something wrong and would rather let Nolan's mother suffer than face consequences. Christine Wells doesn't care about headlines. She doesn't care about money. She cares about answers. She cares about knowing what happened to her son, and these 8 people won't give her that. They won't give her closure. They won't give her justice. Instead, they hired lawyers. Tyler Cox, criminal defense attorney. The guy who wins cases, the guy who gets guilty people acquitted. All 8 of them, within hours. That's not normal. That's not what innocent friends do. Innocent friends cooperate with police. Innocent friends answer questions. Innocent friends turn over evidence immediately. But these 8 people, they did the opposite. They immediately contacted criminal defense attorneys. They coordinated their stories. They hid evidence. They made it impossible for the truth to come out. And now Nancy Grace is investigating. And now the cracks are showing. And now the contradictions are impossible to ignore. There are witnesses who saw Nolan after the boat left. There's a phone full of deleted data that can be recovered. There's a Coast Guard call that makes no sense if the official story is true. There's behavior from 8 people that screams guilt. There's a mother who will not stop fighting. So to the 8 people on that boat, to the people who say you're innocent, to the people who claim you cooperated, to the people who say you answered questions. Why did you lawyer up before Nolan's body was found? Why did you coordinate your story? Why are you hiding his phone? Why won't you just tell the truth? Because the truth is the only thing that will set you free. And if you're truly innocent, you should be desperate to tell it. But you're not. You're silent. You're protected. You're letting another family suffer, and that tells the entire world that something went catastrophically wrong on that boat. Something you knew about, something you're covering up, something that cost Nolan his life. Nolan Wells went on a boat alive. Nolan Wells did not come home. Nolan Wells died in the custody of 8 people who immediately hired lawyers. That's not a mystery. That's a crime. That's murder. That's 8 people who chose their own freedom over a young man's life. And Christine Wells will get justice. Because the truth will come out. Because that phone will be examined. Because these witnesses will be heard. Because Nolan's voice will not be silenced by lawyer coordination and lies and strategic timing and impossible demands. Christine Wells will get justice because she will not stop. Because a mother's love is stronger than any defense attorney. Because the truth always comes out eventually. Subscribe so you see the moment these 8 people finally face accountability for what they did to Nolan Wells. Subscribe so you're part of the force that demands justice for a young man who was silenced. Subscribe so Christine Wells knows the world is watching. The world is listening, and we will not forget Nolan Wells. Now let me break down the 5 hours, because this is critical. This is where the story falls apart. Nolan and his friends arrive at Horn Island around 11:30 a.m. on July 4th. 5 people on the Triton, 3 other boats, 30 kids total, 5 hours. That's what they're claiming, 5 hours on the island. So they should leave around 4:30 p.m. Right, that's their timeline. 4:30 p.m. departure, documented by GPS. Except Nolan isn't on the boat. Nolan is supposed to be coming back. Nolan is supposed to get to the boat in time, but he doesn't. So where is he between 3:30 when he allegedly left Katie and 4:30 when the boat supposedly left? 1 full hour, 60 minutes. Where is Nolan? What is he doing? Who is he with? His friends don't know. They say they don't know. But the Coast Guard operator thinks someone is dead. So something catastrophic happened in that window. Something that required an emergency call. Something that required a fake distress call. Something that changed everything. And then when they come back to the mainland without Nolan, when they realize the enormity of what's happened, that's when they panic. That's when they call the lawyers. That's when they coordinate the story. Warren calls Nolan's mother at 11 p.m. asking if she's heard from Nolan, while holding Nolan's phone, while he knows his phone. While he knows Nolan didn't come home, think about that psychological cruelty. He's calling Christine Wells asking if she's heard from her son, while he's holding the phone, while he knows something went horribly wrong, while he's about to destroy evidence and coordinate a lie. That's evil. That's calculated. That's someone who knows guilt and is choosing to hide it anyway. These 8 people didn't accidentally have their best friend die. These 8 people made conscious choices. Choices to hire lawyers. Choices to hide phones. Choices to coordinate stories. Choices to let a mother suffer without answers. Those aren't accidents. Those are decisions. Those are conspiracies. Now let's talk about what a real investigation would look like. Because we don't have one. That's the problem. A real criminal investigation would have seized Nolan's phone immediately, within hours. They would have had forensic teams on Horn Island before the tide changed. They would have had cadaver dogs deployed to find any remaining evidence. They would have interrogated all 8 people separately. Not together, separately, so their stories couldn't match. They would have examined the Triton for blood evidence, for impact sites, for any forensic evidence of struggle or trauma. They would have had the Coast Guard operator testify about what she heard, about why she asked if anybody was alive. They would have had the 2 witnesses come in with video evidence, with timeline documentation, with expert analysis of their ability to identify Nolan. But none of that happened. None of it. Because the official story was decided before any investigation. Nolan drowned. Accidental drowning. Case closed. And the 8 people on that boat know it. They know the investigation is a sham. They know law enforcement isn't going to pursue this. They know they can coordinate their lies without consequences. They know they can hide phones and lawyer up and refuse to answer questions. And nobody is going to make them. That's why they're not worried. That's why they're doing podcasts. That's why they're raising money. That's why they're filing defamation lawsuits. Because they know the system is protecting them. But Christine Wells isn't going to let this go. Christine Wells knows her son. Christine Wells knows Nolan didn't accidentally drown. Christine Wells knows something sinister happened, and she will spend every moment of every day fighting for justice. Because that's what mothers do. Mothers fight. Mothers demand answers. Mothers don't stop until truth comes out. And truth will come out. Because that phone will be examined. Because Cellbrite will recover every deleted message, every deleted photo, every piece of evidence they thought they destroyed. And when that phone is examined, when those messages are recovered, when the timeline becomes clear, these 8 people will have nowhere to hide. Their lawyers won't be able to save them. Their coordination won't work. Their lies will collapse. And Christine Wells will get what she deserves. Not money, not headlines, not revenge. Answers. Simple answers about what happened to her son. Why did he go on that boat? Why didn't he come home? Why did his best friends lie? Why is the investigation broken? Why is the system protecting them? Answers. That's all Christine wants. Answers. That's all Nolan deserves. Justice.